Wells Fargo launched a new card that's positioned to eat everyone's lunch. We'll cover everything you need to know, the other cards at risk, some customer personas and how people might play this, and whether I'm going to add this to my roster. Big favor, give this a thumbs up to help with the algorithm. If you know anyone else that might benefit, then share this with them. Yesterday, Wells Fargo launched a new Attune World Elite MasterCard that's offering 4% back on a lot of categories. Top line marketing is that the card is for well-being, pets, and the world. The initial response from some people is that this is a hippie card, but even if you are someone that has a gas car and you don't care about a lot of the wellness stuff, there are probably still multipliers that are useful. Put another way, there's the option for vegetarian food, but they still have meat. We have 3 broad multipliers, but there's a lot here. For the first one, you're getting 4% on self-care, which includes gym memberships, spas, and salons. Looking at the terms and example merchants, you have beauty and barbershops, gyms and fitness studios, spas and massage parlors, and a bunch of examples they give are Supercuts, ClassPass, and LA Fitness. I'm guessing things like Barry's Bootcamp or Orange Theory would probably count for this as well. The second multiplier is probably the most intense one. You're getting 4% back on sports, recreation, and entertainment. This one is broad to almost an obscene level, and why I think a lot of other cards are in the crosshairs. You have Create and Collect, which already has a lot of options, so craft stores with things like Etsy, game shops which include Oculus and TCG Player, and also camera and photographic supply stores, which can be interesting. For me, I'm curious if B&H and Sammy's cameras would count for the camera category, or whether they would be electronic stores. Obviously, there is the B&H card, but it's good to have options. Next up is gardening and floral. Can't really speak to this too much, but I can imagine homeowners valuing this quite a bit. For pet care, they have BarkBox, Chewy, Petco, and other miscellaneous services. If you're a dog owner, I feel like this is pretty solid. Sports and recreational equipment is also a huge opportunity. You have bike shops, boat rentals, marina supplies, motor homes and RVs, sporting apparel, and sporting goods stores. If you're camping or doing cross-country trips or a host of other things, this can be huge. I don't see REI on the list, but I feel like that should qualify as well. Sports and live entertainment is what you'd expect, so obvious ones like Ticketmaster and StubHub, but also Legoland, box offices for a bunch of stadiums and sports, and even Patreon. Disney is also on the list, but on a later category. Streaming is super broad, and it means that you can lock in 4%. Right side also has a bunch of merchants that you'd expect, but beyond that, you also have bookstores, cable, digital goods, motion picture theaters, and music stores. Whether you're consuming most of your content digitally or physically, you have a ton of options. The last one for the second multiplier is recreation and leisure, which feels a little insane. Aquariums and zoos, amusement parks, carnivals, public golf courses, and other recreational services. Also tourist attractions, trailer parks, and campgrounds. Example of merchants include Disneyland, Disney World, Icon Pass, Six Flags, Vail Resorts, Universal, and also even Wyoming Game and Fish Department. This section alone might force other cards to increase multipliers or add other benefits to their cards. The third multiplier is 4% back on planet-friendly purchases. This includes EV charging, public transportation, and also secondhand goods. So for example, antique shops, if that's your jam, buses are pretty straightforward and can be useful. EV charging is a surprisingly weak spot for a lot of cards. Public transportation, including ferries, might put the Chase Sapphire Reserve at risk. If you're on the East Coast or you travel to Europe a lot, then passenger railways can be a great category. The last one is other transportation and includes options like Uber and Zipcar. The crazy part is that it's 4% back for all of these categories, it's uncapped, and there's no annual fee. If you look at the landscape, there's not that many cards with the same mix of these 3 major benefits. There are a lot of solid 5% back cards out there, but a lot of them also have caps or rotating categories rather than being this broad. When the categories line up, it can be perfect, but otherwise it might be a bit annoying. There's also other cards I consider specialty pickups. For example, the US Bank Altitude Go's claim to fame is 4% back on dining, but the other categories are not ideal. You also have other options that are competitive, like the Capital One Saver One. This card has no annual fee, unlimited cash back, but only 3%, and dining, entertainment, popular streaming, and grocery stores. For a lot of people, the main draw of the Saver One is that it covers a lot of ground. If you take it though and you cross out 2 of the 4 options and you have the card compete on just dining and grocery stores, it starts to look a lot more pedestrian. Okay, so does that mean it's game over for everyone? Not really. One major thing is that they're not fighting for the big categories like dining, groceries, or travel with this card. They're avoiding the bloodbath and the arms race of Chase, Capital One, and everyone else and focusing on everything else. An additional consideration is the marketing. All of it for this card is around cash back. On the other hand, the other cards mention points. Main reason being that those cards allow point transfers. All points-based Wells Fargo cards like the Autograph and Autograph Journey will be able to transfer points to initial partners like Choice, Air France KLM, Life Miles BA, Aer Lingus, and Iberia. So for Wells Fargo, cashback is cashback, points are points. That's not the case for other issuers. So for example, for Capital One, you can turn your cashback into miles. You can take that cashback, move it over here to points, and have that upside. If you're trying to do aspirational trips, points allow for outsized value. For example, a first-class flight might otherwise run you $6,000 and $9,000 per way. Using points, it might only be 100K points. Put another way, $1,000 in cash back, and you have the option but not the obligation to redeem for this experience. People happily generally pay 2K to 3K for business class, and a lot of it is pretty aggressive routing. Or you outright have to start your flights from abroad like Manila or Kuala Lumpur and go to the US and then go back to Manila or Kuala Lumpur, pretty much forcing you to take 2 trips. If you are looking for these types of experiences, you can generally value your bank points at about 2 cents per point. In that case, with the Saver One, if you have the Venture X as well, 3% is 3x, and at 2 cents per point, that's about 6% in value. And maybe even a lot higher. Definitely not for everyone, but for some people, there is a lot of upside. On that note, if you want to learn more about these cards or pretty much any other cards out there, and you want to support the channel, we do have links on the website, asksabby.com, and also down below in the description box. Make sure the links are competitive and that the cards make sense for you, but otherwise, it is a huge way to support the channel, so thank you guys in advance. Okay, so what are some other cards that are at risk? I think a lot of specific vendor cards are going to be on the chopping block. For example, the Wells Fargo card locks in 4% for Disneyland and Disney World. You can pretty much go down the list of merchants, and you'll see the same thing play out. For example, would you rather get 3x reward points for all Six Flags purchases, or 4% on Six Flags and on a bunch of other things? Outside of specialty benefits, I don't see the point. For normal people, I'm not sure if it makes sense to even get those cards. Factor in that a lot of them end up on the chopping block because it's not core to the business. If you're on Team Cashback, then this is a solid pickup if you want a Wells Fargo card. With all of this said, let's look at some user personas and how this card might work. Even if you hate some of the categories, there probably are some for you. Let's say you're a new grad or young professional looking for hobbies. This card is the checklist for pretty much everything. Musical instruments, photography, painting, art supplies, fitness and exercise, hiking, gardening. If you have a dog or cat, you work out, you take the train, city bike, all super useful. We'll cover my situation at the end of the video. If you have kids, then I can imagine this being pretty awesome. Disneyland and Disney World are pretty obvious, but if you do more outdoorsy stuff like hiking or camping, this can also be great. If either they or you yourself are into sports like hockey or football, equipment can get pretty pricey. If you don't have kids or they're off to college, then this can be useful for a lot of the other random categories. For example, if you're doing road trips across the US, then RV and motorhome rentals can be pretty good but also expensive. If you're doing home improvement, then there's a ton of categories. If anything, I feel like this card is perfect for families or people that have a lot of hobbies. For me personally, it hits a few strong categories. For workouts, we generally do Barry's Bootcamp or ClassPass, so this would work. Events are also good, and certain things like football or basketball can be pretty expensive. Side note, hoping Luka wins his first ring. Another expensive one is skiing, and also if you snowboard, having Epic and Icon can be solid. Also, we switched to Icon this year, and it feels a lot more expensive. Imagine a family of 4 and doing it every year. Some people I know are trying to get me into golf. That also looks very expensive, and that would benefit here. Okay, so am I getting this card? Probably not, at least for now. It's not a bad card, and I think it can be super enticing, but for me, I feel like I have other levers to pull that are more impactful. For example, there are some other cards out there that offer free award nights for hitting, let's say, 15K in spends, and you can use that free night at a place that might otherwise retail for $2,000 a night. For now, for what I'm trying to do, it makes more sense to do that. If, or probably when we have kids, I'm guessing that we're not going to travel as much, and we probably will switch more to a cashback setup. Until then, though, we are focused more on transferable points and higher upside stuff. We still have a bunch of things to cross off our bucket list. Also, if you do want to see more of those trips, then check out Mandy Roams and Zebi Fung, where we're trying to post more travel stuff. Like with everything, your mileage may vary, so do what makes sense for you. Again, if you want to learn about cards, we have links on the website, asksabby.com, and down below in the description box. If you made it to this point, leave a cowboy emoji in the comments down below, and I'll try to heart it and also respond. 3 questions. Number 1, what are your thoughts on the card? Number 2, what merchants or vendors would it help with the most? And number 3, are you getting the card? Let me know and everyone else know in the comments down below. Big favorite, thumbs up, consider subscribing, share this with a friend, but otherwise hope you liked it. See you next time.